Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics. Welcome to the North Pole Sampler, our first ever sew-along here at Shabby Fabrics. So happy you're joining us to make this really fun and beautiful quilt. And of course, we're going to dive right into it. Now, as I promised before, I want to make this simple enough so that a beginner can be successful. If you are a more experienced quilter, there may be a lot of things that you're like, yes, I already know that, Jen. So go ahead and feel free to skip ahead. Or if there's something I've said, if you're one of the new to sewing, that's confusing, go ahead and stop the video and go back and rewind and try again. If you have questions, let us know. We want you to be successful and enjoy the sew along. As we said before, you could certainly be using our kit or using your own fabrics. So of course I will be using the kits that are on the quilt behind me, but anytime that you see, say I'm using Aqua Snowflake, you will be using whatever fabric that you want to substitute for that all throughout the quilt. So that's going to make that easier if you are sewing from home using your own stash. Whatever, like I said, if you're going to, instead of using the green holly, which is what I'll be using, wherever you see that represented in the quilt, I would encourage you to pick one fabric to basically be representing that if you're going to be sewing along with your own fabrics at home. Of course, you'll need your pattern. We offer that comes in the kit. It's also available as a printed pattern and as a PDF download. So I definitely want to look at the pattern first because we'll be referring to it throughout the sew along. And I always like to have a visual reference of what my block is going to look like. It'll help us be successful. If you did go ahead and download that and print it from your home computer, most home computers are only able to print 8.5 by 11-inch paper. You'll notice on our larger cutting guides, I have 11 by 17-inch paper. That's for people who have either purchased the kit and are already getting their pattern in the kit, or if you've purchased the paper pattern. If you are downloading that from home, you will just have a couple pages where you'll need to kind of tape those together so that it's going to be the full span and you'll be able to see it just the way that I'll be presenting it here on the screen. So of course you're going to have everything laid out. Make sure you have all your necessary things. Lots of things represented on the table. I'll just speak to those as we're moving along through the sew along. I put a fresh needle in my machine. That's always important, and using really good thread. I will be using the Confetti 50 weight cotton in just the white for the entire quilt, and I have an 80/20 needle in there and a fresh spool of thread in my bobbin. So let's talk again through the pattern. I want you to make sure that you have everything you need for your kit. We always want to make sure you have that. So your first page of your pattern has all of the fabrics that are in your kit as well as the sizes of those. Make sure that your kit has everything. You always want to do that kind of check, and you can even put a little check mark in there or just visually just march right down the list that you have everything. Okay, once that's done, this is a page that's going to help you and you're going to be referring to it throughout the sew along. You can kind of just put that right there. You might even want to pin that up by your sewing machine. It's just a nice visual reference. Is my site picture right? Does my tree look like that? Does my wreath look like that? I always love to have a reference point. We will be starting with the tree block today, but before we jump into the tree block, I want to give you a couple options for cutting your fabric. First off, I love to use sizing. It helps relax the folds that are naturally in your fabric. That just happens whether you're using your fabric at home. It's usually folded on a shelf, maybe in your sewing room, and of course in your kit it's been folded. So you'll want to go ahead and get those wrinkles out and relax. And I love that the sizing not only helps to do that, but it adds just a little bit more body. So when I am pressing my fabric, it just seems to hold its shape and it's crisp and it's just a little bit sharper, and I love it. I can't recommend it enough. Very inexpensive product, Faultless Magic. This is the light hold. Very available at Target, Walmart, all those types of places. So don't be shy about using sizing. Cutting guide. What we've provided in your kit is a cutting guide. I always like to know, do I really have enough fabric to do this project? So starting with page 1 of the cutting guide. So you can see the little green snowman fabric, which we can pull out real quick. We're showing you that it's 18 inches wide, right? And this is the full width of that fabric. So this is helping you understand that after you've pressed your fabric out and it's laying out nice and flat and unfolded, when I lay my fabric straight out ahead of me, that's what we're representing here. So when we show this footprint, this is what we're talking about. Again, you're going to go ahead and press all those wrinkles out, and naturally, I'm going to turn this actually sideways when I begin to cut this, and we'll cut this fabric together. You have a couple options. You could cut one fabric absolutely all the way through, because we're showing you here. You're going to cut these pieces for the wreath block, and you're going to cut these other pieces down here for the gift block. And you can go ahead and cut everything now, so you only touch this fabric once. To help you stay organized, we've also included fabric labels. So let's say that you do opt to just touch this fabric once and cut it all the way through. You're going to cut everything out for your wreath block and cut everything out for your gifts. You will go to your fabric labels then, simply cut that out with a pair of scissors, cut out that little tag, and you'll attach that tag to those shapes, right? And we're using little wonder clips. You could use pins. I think the wonder clips are nice. I'm not poking myself. And wonder clips, of course, we use those for binding. We use them all the time. So the big clips, the little clips, whatever you have there will work nicely. And it just helps you know what that fabric belongs to. So in this instance, like the wreath block, I have 16 pieces that are cut 4.5 inch square. I would just use one of my labels and clip that to all 16. So here's my A block. I have multiple pieces with one little label. And now I know that when I need a piece A, I'm just going to grab that. Being organized always helps a project go together faster, and it's more enjoyable. That's a lot of fabric to be cutting out, so I do encourage you that if you do opt to cut all of the colored fabrics, not the white right now, just the colored fabrics, once you label them, go ahead and start grouping them. Okay, here's all of my fabrics for my wreath block. Here's all my fabrics for my stocking block. And once those are cut, you can put those in a baggie and just put those so they're ready to go. So on the week where we're addressing that block, you can just pull that bag out and we just start sewing. So I think there's a lot to be said about cutting all of your fabric at once. Let's say you just don't want to do that. You want to cut each fabric as you need it and only for that block. What you can do in that instance, for example, again with the wreath block, let's say you only wanted to cut the fabric out for the wreath block today and you'll save the other fabric for the gift block. You can go ahead and just save that fabric label and clip that to the fabric and put it aside. So when it's time to go do the gift block, you'll pull that fabric out and you're like, oh yeah, I need to cut those pieces out, and you'll know what you're supposed to do, and the label's already there for you. So I wanted to give you a couple options with that. So let's go ahead, let's get started. So I'm definitely going to be referring to, I'm just going to cut my first fabric that's on my cutting guide. I am the type of person that wants to go ahead and cut it. Here's one of the other reasons. If you're going to go to a quilt retreat, I love going to a quilt retreat with everything already cut out, so all I have to do is sew. And a lot of times one of the reasons I do that is there's limited space to cut. You end up having to wait. And of course, if you're cutting an extensive kit, you could be cutting for an hour or maybe 2. And of course, nobody else can be approaching the cutting table. So that's another thing to just think about as a potential reason to maybe go ahead and cut everything out at once. Again, I would encourage you to kind of wait to cut the white. The white, of course, is extensive. There's a lot of cutting there. Can you cut it out all at once? Absolutely. But I think what I would encourage you to do, cut all your printed fabrics, your colored fabrics, and then cut the white for each block as you go. All right, let's put the pattern aside just for a moment, and we're going to talk about how are we going to cut this fabric? What are some strategies for maximizing and economizing fabric? Because I think that's important. Do I make mistakes in sewing? Absolutely. I make them quite often, and I like to have a little bit of extra fabric left over. So if I do make a cutting mistake, I'm okay. We've definitely given you ample fabric in your kit so that you have a bit of what's called kind of an insurance policy. So as you can see, I'm getting my sizing all over the place, and I would probably, if you have a full-size ironing board, of course be ironing it there. It's a little bit cumbersome on a small workspace that I'm on, and it'll make it go a little bit quicker, of course, if you are on a full-size iron. So you're just going to be ironing everything out nice and smooth. I'll keep ironing this, and when I come back, we're going to start cutting this first block, or these first pieces, right away. Okay, I think we're ready to go. So let's move some things out of the way. You can see this takes some space for sure. We don't want to cut any of our block and our pattern. Let's look at that cutting guide again. Let's understand what will be happening, and that helps us to know what we'll be doing here. So I turned my fabric this way because, as you can see, coming up this way, I'm going to be clipping off this little unit here. So I'm going to turn it, so now my footprint is like this. I've got the long edge here and the 18-inch there. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows to cut for the wreath block that are 4.5-inch square. Granted, we're not doing the wreath block today, we're doing the tree, but I'm just showing you how to cut out a piece that has multiple pieces to maximize the fabric and minimize the time in cutting it. So it's kind of it's a way to do it in a more economical and a faster way and have plenty of fabric left over, so if we do make any mistakes, we have our little insurance policy built in for us. So let's go ahead and cut our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows, 4.5 inches square. How are we going to do that efficiently? Of course, I'm going to start off with a bigger ruler, and I need to clean that edge. So let's start with getting that where I feel I'm running pretty parallel with the line on here, and I'm running pretty parallel here. So I'm as squared up as I believe I can be at this point, and I'm just going to go ahead and come in with my Creative Grid ruler, and I'm going to have the ruler toward me that has the black dots. Why am I doing that? Because the black dots are fractions thereof. 1/2, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, and 4.5. We're cutting 4.5-inch squares. So that's why I'm going to have the black dots toward me. If I had this turned around and I had the white dots that are 4, I have to go find that 4.5 on my own. Can I find it? Sure. Might I make a mistake? Sure. Am I more likely? Sure again, right? So that's the beauty behind the Creative Grids, and of course the grip on the back of the ruler helps that fabric, or helps the ruler stay in position when I'm cutting so it doesn't slip away as I extend through the cut. So I will definitely have the black dots toward me. I just wanted to show you about the Creative Grids rulers because, again, if you're new to quilting, there's a lot of rulers on the market. Why would you buy one versus the other? That is why, and this is one of the things that makes Creative Grids so unique, is the white dot and the black dot technology and concept. Now with my rotary cutter, of course I've got my little guard here. I've opened it up, so I'm just going to give a squeeze. I'm lined up here, and I'm just going to clean that edge. So right now, I'm using my mat as my reference point for my cut. But you know what? That's going to end right now. Now, my ruler is where I'm lining up. This 4.5, I'm laying right along my edge, and I'm just going to keep making cuts here. Okay, and if you want to just move that slightly out of the way because it helps you see where the next cut is, go ahead and do that. Do whatever's going to make you feel comfortable about the cut you're doing. So we'll keep going. Okay, now let's look at that real quick. I have 1, 2. I'm just going to stack those. 3, 4, and I'm going to stack 5 actually, because I know, looking at my cutting diagram, that for 5 of those rows I'm cutting 3 each, and for the last one I'm cutting just 1. I want to conserve fabric. I'm not going to put that just aside for the moment. Why did I stack these on here? Because I know I've got them all nice and stacked. I'm going to line them up. I'm going to clean that edge, and I'm going to actually use a smaller ruler now because I can. I always use a smaller ruler whenever the opportunity presents because it's just easier to handle. So let's go clean off that edge. And I'm just going to double check. I'm going to be cutting 3 squares out of each one. See how I'm doing this so much quicker by stacking the fabric. This is how you can cut a kit out in actually very short amount of time. And it could be, depending on the fabric, I might even be able to get, see, I've already got my stacks, right? I've got my 15, and I have to get 1 more. It's possible that I could get it out of here. I think I'm a little bit short on that. You know what? I might be able to get it. Let's try. Let's see if we can. I love saving fabric. Let's see if we can do it. We didn't even need that extra one. That's incredible. Okay, I'm just going to double check that that fabric is the right size. 4.5 inches square. Fantastic. Yes. Even better. I love it. Okay. We're already saving fabric. We didn't even need this extra strip. Now, again, if this was me, I would keep going and I would cut the gifts. But for now, this is when we're going to go ahead and go over to our labels. Let's do that right now. And we're just going to go ahead and cut out our little label right now. So I don't ever have to wonder again, what does this fabric belong to? What block is that for? That's my wreath, right? And see what it says? Wreath E, 4.5 by 4.5, cut 16. We did that. And we're just going to bring this here. We'll get our Wonder Clips, and we're just going to clip that. And I will keep cutting. I'll just put that aside, and I'll keep cutting that fabric, and I'll cut gift I, and with this fabric, right, I'll just label it. So that's the beauty of cutting it all at once. If you're like, nope, 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 I don't want anything to do with that, then go ahead and do this with the leftover fabric. If you just don't want to go ahead and keep cutting, you want to jump right into the sewing, I understand that, by the way. You just want to get going, then go ahead and put all the fabric together and still label that, and that will just remind you that when you get to that block, that you'll just need to make sure that you go ahead and cut that. You can refer to your cutting guide and be on your way. So, all right, we've already talked about cutting fabric. We've talked about how to maximize fabric by maybe stacking some strips. If you're not comfortable with that, don't do it. You might also want to practice on some scrap fabric before you jump into the actual fabric in the kit. I always encourage that. Of course, practicing your 1/4-inch seam allowance, very important, because it's going to come into play very quickly as we start to put the block together. All right, we have cut our kit out all the way through, and we have made out of our fabric 3 out of the 4 tree blocks that are within our quilt. We have 2 up here and 2 down in the bottom right corner. with a house block in between. So this is the fabric I have left over to piece the final block, which we will be doing together. All right, so let's just jump right into the instruction on how to do that particular block. So we'll need our pattern, and we'll put our cutting guide aside for now. Tree blocks, here we are. And everything is full color, so this should be very easy to understand. And we're just going to start off with our piece B. We have our label here. I love that. I know that I'm doing the right thing because everything is labeled. We also have the measurement, so it becomes pretty easy to understand. Now, we won't be going over specific sizes to cut everything because this is Stacy Issue's pattern, by the way. This is called North Pole Sampler. This collection is called Snow Day. Stacy Issue designed this pattern a while back with a different Moda collection. She's a Moda designer. And when we saw Snow Day, we said, Stacy, we would love to make this our first ever sew along with your North Pole Sampler pattern. Would we be able to do that? And she graciously allowed us to do that. Thank you so much, Stacy. So we are not going to be giving away the measurements. We want to make sure we honor Stacy, that you are purchasing a pattern or potentially downloading it. So we're just going to talk about assembly. She's allowed us to talk about the best way to assemble a block, but measurements will be included in the purchase pattern. So let's go ahead and go right into how do we make the block. And this is what we'll be making together. 2 blocks are assembled this way. You'll make 2 blocks this way with the light green, dark green, light green, dark green. And then 2 blocks will be just the reverse with the dark green up top, light green, dark green, light green. So it's the same exact process for all 4 blocks. So let's start off. We have our piece B, and we have 2 piece A's that we're going to need. They're going to go on either side of our piece B. So let's grab that out real quick. And I'm going to show you a couple different ways to approach this. One is something you may have already been introduced to. If you've done any kind of quilting, you've most likely seen this. And let me grab a ruler and a pen. So we're basically going to make kind of what's called a flying geese unit. That's at the very top of our tree. The kind of the old-fashioned way, the way I learned, probably the way you learned, is just to put your square there. You don't even have to do that initially. You can just draw a line before you even put that on top of your rectangle, and you'll simply draw a line. Okay? And we'll place that in the corner. And then we go sew on the line. If you're more comfortable just putting a pin or 2 so nothing moves, go ahead and do it. So I'm going to show you this way, and then I'm going to show you a new tool that we recently found from Creative Grid again that makes this even faster, and you don't have to mark anything. Let's go to the sewing machine, and we're just going to sew this just like we've done so many times before whenever we've made a flying geese block. So let's go do that right now. Okay, you have probably, if you've done any kind of quilting, done this so many times before. You don't even have to think about it. Potentially, though, if you're new to quilting, this would be new to you. So let's go ahead. What do we do with this now? I always like to warm up my seam. It seems to relax the fabric. It is more likely to be compliant with what I want it to do. And I just kind of finger press it to the outside. My goal is that fabric, see how it fits that same corner perfectly. Let's say that it didn't. Let's say it kind of came out like that. You know what? That's where a seam ripper comes into play. Just grab the seam ripper and seam rip and try again. But once you are satisfied and you believe that's where you want the fabric to be, you're happy with your sewing, I like to press it in place, confirm, yep, I'm really happy with that, and then and only then do I pull that back, and with my smallest ruler, I'm laying on my 1/4 inch line right there, do I go ahead and trim that fabric away. But I don't do that until I'm certain. Now you can repeat that process again with grabbing your ruler, grabbing that, drawing the line, and repeating the process. Placing that in the corner and sewing on the line. But there is a faster way to do that, and that is with something called the corner clipper. This is Tammy's absolute favorite tool that I think Creative Grids has probably ever come up with. So let's just look at our pattern right here. So we show you the way, the traditional way of drawing the line, placing the piece, and sewing. So let's just take a look at this right here, and actually more importantly here. There's a tool called the corner clipper. These squares are cut to 2.5 inches. Notice when I lay my ruler on how I have this guidance right here. Can you see that? The tool comes right to the top of my unit, and I have these lines here and here. Let's just go ahead and we're going to cut. This is in lieu of drawing the line. I'm just going to put a little quick pin in there. I didn't have to grab a small ruler. I didn't have to draw my line. Now we'll just go to the sewing machine, and we're just going to start sewing right in that corner all the way to that corner and a standard 1/4 inch seam allowance. Let's do that now. Okay, so let's see. Again, we'll press that just to relax it, kind of warm it up. Finger press it. What I like about that is I'm not kind of pressing and checking and trimming. It's all done. The corner clipper saves you time, and absolutely I have found my Flying Geese blocks are so much more accurate. Look how beautiful that is. So that's the upper portion, and of course there's pieces off to the side, but let's keep going. We're going to keep building these sections, so I'm just going to kind of put that up there. Now what I recommend is kind of making your trips to the sewing machine, again, economize. What do I mean by that? So let's go ahead and do our tree F, and we know we're going to use these pieces here. So we know we're going to use our corner clipper just like we did. Or 2.5. Okay. We want to put a little pin. That's fine. And you know what? I have to be honest with you. When I'm doing small little 2.5 inch squares, and that's a very short distance, I often don't even pin. It's when it becomes a larger one and I'm using the corner clipper and you're traveling a longer distance that sometimes I will add a pin, but I have found it just doesn't appear to be necessary. So again here, and trim. If you have not already joined our Facebook group, gosh, jump in there and join the fun. Morgan is going to be responding to you. She is so excited about the sew along. Definitely jump in there and join the conversation. And there's always all kinds of fun things happening on Facebook. So it's good for not just the sew along, but all the time. All right, and in the corner again. And now we're on our last portion, right? And okay. So that's ready to go, and I can just take that to the sewing machine. Now while I'm going to go over there, because at home my pressing mat isn't next to my sewing machine. It's kind of across the room, just where my electrical outlet happens to be. And where the ironing board fits is not right next to my sewing machine, so I'd really try to economize that. Why don't we just deal with this bottom portion while we can, and we can add that to our trip as well, right? So we have our piece here, and we have piece M, and as you can see, that's going to be on either side. Pretty straightforward, but let's go ahead and get that ready to go as well. Now I would prefer to sew it on this side. You see how I did that? I have two pieces on either side. Can I sew it from this side? Absolutely. But now this piece is kind of blind to me. I want to make sure I actually see it, so I'm actually turn that over. Those are just things you learn along the way that I want to be able to have a visual on both of my fabrics if I can. Let's run over to our sewing machine, and I'm actually going to start with these three, and we're going to sew all of these all at the same time. Okay, so this is what this looks like. That's called chain piecing. It also reduces the amount of thread you're using. Instead of stopping each time and then having those thread trails that you end up trimming off, you know, you're economizing your use of thread, which I appreciate that. Good quality thread costs more money, and you know, it's worth it. But if I can save some thread and time, isn't that a beautiful combination? Anytime I can have a win-win, I love having win-wins. Okay, so same story. We're going to go press, and we're going to relax those seams. You can kind of all just almost stack them up, right? And pressing here. And pressing instructions, by the way, will be included in the pattern. So even if you see me pressing something a little bit differently right now on camera with you, I'm not referring to my pattern. I'm just referring to you right now, giving you the best instruction I can about efficient piecing. But of course, you want to strategize how you are pressing. Just so that I can double check myself, let's double check what they're telling us to do. Press to the outside, and that is exactly what we're doing. Pressing does matter, especially if you're trying to achieve interlocking seams. So don't think it's an insignificant step. It is a significant step. It does matter. Okay, here are my pieces so far. I wanted to show you the corner clipper on the other side because it's not as intuitive, because you have to spin it around. You're like, what are you talking about? I'll put that aside for the moment. Here's what I'm talking about. When I put this on the bottom, like we all know these need to go on these ends, right? This is the portions of our tree. It's like, how do I deal with this corner clipper? How does it work? That's not going to work. How does it need to happen? Just remember, when you're looking at your diagram, if you're sewing here, right, you need to cut over there, just like the rotary cutter is telling you. So in this instance, I need to make the cut along here. You're like, well, how do I do that? And this is where I want to introduce another notion to you that I actually use so much more often than I ever thought that I actually would, and that's a spinning mat. I am so glad these were invented because they have literally made sewing more accurate and, more importantly, safer. I'm not doing some crazy cut across my body. Just don't do it. You're going to be using your spinning mat more than you ever imagined, because we often have scenarios where we're trying to do some cut and you can't get out of the way, but you don't want to disturb your fabrics. That's the beauty of this. So again, let me show you where the corner clipper needs, it's not here, right? It's turned this way. We need to make that cut on all of those. So I'm just going to position that, and I'm going to cut it. I'm going to go ahead and cut that, and that one's kind of ready to go. So let's repeat that so that seems natural, because of course you're looking at your diagram like this, right? You're looking at it just like this. You want to have the same sight picture as your pattern. You know what you need to do, and even if you had a ruler and a pencil, it's just kind of awkward getting in this corner. that's why I love, okay, let me understand it. Where does that line need to be? There. Fantastic. Let me turn this around so it's an optimal position for me to cut it and it's safe. I'm not doing any crazy cuts across my body. So you get the idea. Put it on, confirm it's right. Put on the corner clipper if you're using that. Confirm it's right. Turn, press, let's cut. Okay, and those are ready to go. This group, I'm not even going to pin. I want to show you how accurate this is. It just seems like the corner clipper presses everything together and it doesn't move while I'm sewing. So I'm going to take those to the machine. And I'm also, because I still have the bottom of my tree, I'm going to do my other side, right? I'm going to sew those too. Let's go do that right now. Okay, that's what that's going to look like right now. When you do the kind of consolidated, you know, cut, 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 sew, 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 it really does make blocks come together quickly. All right, same thing. Let's heat those all up together. That's another way that you can save time. I can put that off to the side. Now in this bottom portion of our tree, really whether you press inward or outward is your preference. I think in the pattern we do mention out toward the M. That could really be as you prefer. We could go in or out, really doesn't matter, because we don't have any interlocking seams. There's nothing that we're trying to lock into that, so that would really be your preference. Okay, let's see where we are so far so we understand what's next. We have this portion done and the middle portion done, and we have this done. Well, we know we're missing some parts on the end, right? So let's look at that. What do we need to do next? These little pieces, you can save them or toss as you prefer. I like to save it. You never know when you might need a little piece or you want to do something fun with that. So as you can see, getting back actually to the page 1, that's my top portion here. Let's go with our D. This is our piece D. So for the very top of my tree, I need to put piece D on either end of that. Okay, so one of the things I like with my pressing mat is it can also be kind of my layout mat. So now that I am ready to kind of move into almost my final assembly, I need a piece A again for this one. I'm going to lay everything out now and make sure that is it all good. Do I have everything I need? So that's this one. We've already got the piece A, so we need a little piece I. So see how that's labeled? I don't have to wonder, did I get the right fabric? Yes, I have the right fabric because I labeled everything so carefully as I went along. And then my bottom portion doesn't have an extra piece because that is everything. And then of course my bottom is down here. So what I love about laying this out on my pressing mat is now I can just take this over near my sewing machine and I'm going to sew it all together, placing it back on the mat, taking it back and pressing it. So what does that mean now? I would do all of my right side together, right side together, right side together, and then we know we don't really have to do anything here. So I'm going to go I stack them like this. Pin if you want. Let's go to the sewing machine. Okay, let's see what we've got. Nice. So I think what I love about this iron, I can bring it to me. It's just so nice that it's cordless, so I don't have to be worried about, all the way across the room. I can bring it to me, which is really nice, and I can stay near my sewing machine, which I want to be right now, while I'm doing the final assembly of this block. Okay, let's see how we're doing. Let's put us back. Oh, that goes up there, there, and there. So as you can see, now I need to do this side. Here, here, and here. I don't need to do anything with these right now. So what you can do, if you want to just turn this around, we'll bring that one, and that one to the sewing machine. Let's go sew that. Okay, we are so close to having our block go together. So let's just press that to the outside. So fun. I love doing applique projects, but one of the things I love about doing piece projects is I get to really practice my quarter-inch seam allowances, good just habits of pressing, good habits of cutting, all of those types of things. I love to do, just practice that. Now, I want to show you something. Totally unplanned, didn't expect this to happen. Do you see how this looks like this and it's off? I'm not okay with that. Notice I did not pin. That's why that happened, by the way. I'm not okay with that like that. Sometimes when I think I'm saving time by not pinning, I end up spending time seam ripping. I'm not okay with that. I'm going to use my Clover seam ripper. And how I just get in there is I just clip a couple threads every 3 or 4 stitches. And we're going to take that off. I don't like that. I don't want mistakes in my projects. I don't want my blocks to be distorted. We'll just take that away. And if you're very careful, you can easily get that off and you're not going to distort or start your fabric fraying in a big way. All right, and then I will just go ahead. I make sure that I do take off any of those threads because I don't want extra threads in my seam. The threads that I seam ripped. And I'm just going to press again. I also make sure whenever that happens that I cut that fabric right. Maybe that didn't come out right because maybe I didn't cut that fabric out right. So let's look at that. That is the second, let's see, this should be a piece A, which should be 2.5 inches square. And we know that this is 2.5 inches right here. Yep, so that was all me. That was me getting a little lazy, not wanting to pin. And I got a little bit of fabric right there. I'm going to trim it away. Let's trim that away. And this time, we can even put that same edge on there. When I pin, it's going to come out perfectly this time. So I want you guys to know that I'm not going to just cut a video when I make a mistake, because you're going to make mistakes too. And like, how do we deal with it? Do we deal with it? Yes, we do deal with it, because this is a quilt that you're going to put a lot of time into. When you see something doesn't go as planned, fix it. Just fix it. All right, let's go sew that again. Okay, let's see if we're happier with the result this time. Same piece of fabric, and now it's where it belongs, right? And now we can move on. So I know it can be tempting sometimes to just go, oh, it's good enough. You know what? Let's fix that. Let's make sure our quilt is as good as we can make it. All right, so we've done that. Let's turn this around now, and let's lay all the pieces out. Let's see if everything looks right to us, and we can begin to sew these little rows together to finish up. And it looks like they're all coming out nicely. And so as you would expect, I'm going to put this row to this, and I'm going to pin that. And I'm going to sew this row to this for now. I don't want to do this. Let me show this to you. Don't be tempted to do it where you sew these together, and then you add on this, and you add on this, and you add on this. I have found, and it's best practice, to sew row 1 and 2 together, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and then go back and sew 1 and 2 and 3 to 4 together, and then maybe 5, 6, and 7, 8, and then keep building that way versus just keeping adding on to the first row. Things can get distorted pretty quickly like that. Now I'm going to pin that. Here's how I pin. I pin in the front, and I also pin from this side, not the other. The beautiful part about pinning on this side is I don't ever have to remove my pins, and that pin's bent. Let's get rid of that. By the way, treat yourself to a couple of these pin cushions. I can't tell you how many times my fabric's covering them up, or they're across the room on my ironing board, because of course I'm ironing and removing pins. Just get 2 of these. Leave 1 at your sewing machine and 1 on your ironing board, and you're just going to be a lot happier person, I think. Pin here and pin at the end, because you know that has to work, right? And then you make everything in the middle work. So I kind of just smooth that out, and I might put a pin right in here, but I don't just put my pins in the front and work my way along and hope these 2 are going to end up. You know, I often have to ease things in, as we call it, to make it all work. I think that's pretty natural. Same thing here, right? We're going to go here. I'm going to put my pin in here in my front. I'm going to put my pin, that's another bent pin. What's happening here? Let's get rid of those bent pins. And let's put our other pin in here. And then we will work out everything in the middle. I'll put in a couple more pins, and let's go sew. Our block's going to be put together here in no time. Okay, here we go. Okay, pins out, And let's do some pressing. Instructions for pressing. Again, we try to give you guidance on that. Let's see what they're saying here. As you're sewing the block together, you could really be, this is sometimes pressing is super important, like gotta go in certain directions to have interlocking seams. In this case, as you could see, you could be pressing maybe all the seams down. You could be pressing your seams open. This is one of those things where it would be your discretion. For now, let's see what, sometimes I'll open up a seam and just watching the fabric behave will kind of tell me what it maybe wants to do. I already feel like this seam wants to go there. You know what? I'm going with that. If the fabric leans a direction, and unless it's going to interfere with a seam later on where I have to force it somewhere else, I'll go with that. I don't see a reason to not do that right now, so I'm going to go with that. Here's the great news. You press this all down and later on find out it should have been pressed open, just change it. You can totally do that. So let's do the same thing. Let's warm that seam up. That's going to be here. Again, it's kind of leaning that direction, so sounds like a good idea to me. Let's do it. Let's go there. So there's that unit. I would go ahead and sew this to this unit now. Let's do that. So we can pin that here, beginning and end. We know that has to happen there for the block to come out properly. We'll pin right there in the middle. So we know that's going to be here, right? We can also, actually I don't think I better do that because it's really going to be kind of in the way. We'll come back. Let's go sew this real fast and then we'll come back and do that final row. Oh, we're so close, guys. Oh my gosh, we're almost there. How fun. So we'll press again, of course. Our trend has been to press down toward kind of the bottom of the block. So I think we should continue with the trend. Oh, isn't that interesting? Now, let's talk about this. Perfect example. Again, not planned. Here we go, guys. See how now, because of that compound right there, you've got seams? Look where the seam wants to go. It says, I don't really want to go down because there's a lot of bulk there already. It's okay. It's okay that some of the seams are going down and one's going up. If that bothers you, reverse them. It doesn't bother me. And when I look at my pattern, which I always consider, I look at what's next to it. Is it going to be a problem if these seams go down and that seam right there goes up? It's not, because I don't have interlocking seams on any side, so it's okay. But if I did, and say that all of those seams went one direction or the other, you need to take that into account. So I'm okay with that. I'm going to go ahead and let that bottom seam be like that, going up, the others going down. Again, if it bothers you, you're like, I can't deal with it, then reverse it. All you do is warm it up, and then you just keep pushing all those seams upward. That one would come upward. Okay. So our final row. I love it. Our block is almost together. You would, of course, be making another block just like this in the same arrangement, and then, like I mentioned, you'll make 2 more blocks, except starting with the dark fabric at the top, alternating with the light, dark, light, dark, light. Okay, we're almost done. One more seam. Let's go do it. How fun! Aww. Okay. And we'll press that final seam downward. There we go. How fun! And there is our block. Oh, and if you have, like, I want to show you, again, not planned. This is where ironing and pressing are different. Do you see I have a little tuck right here? Do you notice, like, when I went to look at that, there's just this little bit of fabric rolled under. When that happens, you need to do that, otherwise your block's going to be short. So I kind of give just a little bit of a pull and get that out of there. I get that fabric kind of out of that valley. Otherwise, whatever size your block's supposed to be, 10.5 inches square, it may be like 10.25 inches or just a little bit, you know, something less than what it should be. So you definitely want to make sure you're not taking tucks when you're making your presses. And then of course, you're just going to put that block aside, make another one, two with the same fabrics but alternating which one's on the top, second, third, and fourth row. So we are done with our first block. It was a very long video, but in subsequent videos, we'll plan on you having all of your fabric cut out, so we're just jumping right into the assembly. If you have questions along the way, leave us some feedback here on YouTube, or of course you can always be emailing. We are going to be responsive and trying to help you out all along the way. We'd love to get your feedback, and I will see you back for our second block, which will be our wreaths. I'll see you next week.